Dom, was 2013, was that when you were still into StarCraft 2?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, that's right.
I didn't really stop until 2015.
Oh shoot.
Why'd you stop?
Well, even then I didn't really stop. I just stopped playing, as much. Like that was around when I made the transition to custom games and co-op.
Okay. I know that StarCraft has a really good history of like mods and like just very original games.
Yeah, actually something that contributed to it falling out of favor so fast, fast for a StarCraft game, was the fact that at launch the arcade for StarCraft 2 wasn't that good. And it wasn't until the final DLC that it really got good.
By arcade, you mean the story mode or like an actual arcade mode?
No, arcade's the custom games mode.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I like the custom games.
From what I knew is that they had like very bizarre things, like someone had an RPG in it, and I think someone made like Warhammer out of, maybe you mentioned this earlier actually, like a Warhammer style.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like the one I played most often was actually the genre is called LOTR, because it was started with Lord of the Rings, but that's the one I was talking about that was Warcraft 3 like.
Oh, so you're saying the base was StarCraft 2?
Yeah.
Ooh, okay, that makes things really interesting. I thought you were talking about like the base was the original StarCraft 1 that they made Warcraft out of. Okay.
Well, that too, but I did not play StarCraft 1.
Ah, gotcha.
Yeah, pre-2015 I was more playing 1v1s. I was playing more seriously. And it wasn't until, people started losing interest and I started losing interest in that particular way of playing, that I started to move toward customs, and then co-op came out.
Gotcha. By the way, when you were playing, were you more of a micromanager or a macro manager?
I was masters. You kind of had to do both.
Fair enough.
I mean, I got there first as Zerg, which
nice.
really requires you to do both a lot. Like my APM was astronomical every game.
Holy crap, dude. Yeah, I had
I think that's what seeing StarCraft professionals was what really made me see esports as a sport. Just understanding the amount of actions per minute a person does, and that I imagine the amount of focus is needed is insane to me. That's where because I remember being very skeptical of esports, like, oh, this is a stupid, dumb thing. And then I'm like, oh wait, these are the people. Okay. Then like my respect started to come out.
Yeah, my respect for esports came out when I first joined the UC esports club, just as a casual club member. I remember, just sitting next to the top USC StarCraft 2.
Throbbing Chode said my mic hates me.
No, but I just remember sitting next to the top esports, the top StarCraft 2 player, and his hands were just non-stop moving, and he was just casually talking to me at the same time. I was like, wait, don't you need to focus on the game? He's like, no, it's just...
So he was just bad. He was like playing bad on purpose, but still like leagues ahead of you.
Yeah. No, he was just it's just muscle memory for him at that point. Like, he just knew what to do. Like, yeah, he would glance over the game just to point and click at the right spot, but he was like, no, I just kind of know what things I need to like put in to the game, and where things need to go, how to manage a few things, just a few casual things, because he wasn't in combat yet.
Actually, Dom might be able to answer this question. Like, what is the thought process when you're there? Like, at that point where it is more muscle memory, are you really thinking the game every moment, or you just kind of recognize patterns and scenarios you've experienced before, and you just kind of know what to do?
And are you like thinking ahead of time?
Okay, so macro, which is macro is the economy. So it's how many resources you're making, how many units you're making with those resources, and staying on top of that. That is patterns, like you were just saying. You get used to doing certain builds, and then you basically match the builds to whatever you're observing that is happening in the game. Whereas micro is much more, you have to do it on the moment, and it's always different.
Right.
But there's a high level of both, just because. So even my APM was at least in the upper hundreds, which means I was doing at least a few actions per second. When you're doing stuff like that, you if you're good at the game, you operationalize it as much as you can.
By that you mean like you just committed to muscle memory, right?
Yeah, you come up with tricks to be like, okay, I split my Marines like this against this type of unit, or I set my hotkeys like this for this type of army. Yeah, stuff like that.
Interesting. You know, it's really interesting that like that thought process and the way you describe all that is actually very similar to how Fortnite pros play the games these days. Especially with how they are able to make shortcuts for how they build things. Like Christian, I know you were you were into Fortnite. Did you get the chance to customize your button layout or anything?
So cousin recently came over because he was sick the other day, and he showed me how to. It's kind of, I felt like an old man, like fuck, I don't know what I'm talking about. And what I thought was interesting was how like he went into the settings and showed me all the shortcuts, press down to like hold to build, and it answered a lot of questions for me, like how people are just so quick.
Oh yeah.
And how certain certain buildings are made with little effort. I'm still again, I'm not at that level as him, but I understanding, for me that was always a very different way of approaching the game. I always kind of go at it at the default settings and kind of learn to play around that, where for him it's about finding the optimal controls and messing around with the systems that would make him perform better than he would otherwise.
Crap, I'm trying to remember. There's like a saying for that where it's just like you need the right tools to do the job correctly. Something
I guess.
That reminds me, BChan,
Throbbing
were
Chode
we
said
gonna
I
play
hate this.
StarCraft?
Were we? I think we were. Shoot, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot. A bunch of games came out. I totally forgot. I'm down to play some StarCraft. I need to re-download it. I mean, based on how good you are, though, I don't know if I can even be a challenge. Kristen, you want to join? StarCraft 2 is free.
Oh yeah, fuck. I can't say no.
Yeah, I mean, if we do competitive, we can do like 2v1 or something, but
No,
there's
I was
still
thinking
a lot
3
of
on
stuff.
3. Shoot.
I was thinking 3v3, and when Dom carries while we are like figuring out how to carry resources around. I'll be the one misclicking things and like having a small like unit go to the wrong side of the map.
I don't know if you guys would want to start with ladder, because these days people playing ladder are usually pretty serious.
I was thinking
No.
versus versus CPU, dude. Shoot.
We could do that. I'd probably set up like a 3v2 situation there.
I mean,
But yeah, no, I'm up for that anytime.
I mean, hey, the hard computers are hard. Like, they have really high APM, dude. Holy crap.
God. I'm thinking just how someone would like try and build an AI to make that. God, sorry. A very outsider. Oh wait, that reminds me of actual AIs and how they're currently getting to the point to beat humans in StarCraft and MOBAs.
Not only that, in fighters too. I mean, we have the Amiibos. Those are some really, really interesting, impressive AIs.
But it's interesting because that was actually the ceiling for a long time. Like AI could not beat a human in those games. Now what they're doing is teams, where teams of AIs are either starting to or are capable of being teams of humans, professionals.
In what games?
Dota, I think, is one, as well as League.
Throbbing Chode said
really?
Dota 2.
Yeah, Justin just said Dota 2.
Oh, were you talking about? I mean, I'm guessing we're talking about like professionals, right? Who are getting beaten.
Yes,
Throbbing Chode said, let me show you.
Because this is kind of going out of
Chode said
topic.
they wrecked MNTIA.
Can anyone else hear what Justin's saying?
I hear the text and talk that he's utilizing. Right now.
Okay.
So do I.
Okay.
Although it might be through like BChan's mic.
It should not.
Throbbing Chode said beggars can't be choosers.
Nope, that's definitely for my speakers.
Jicho, have you restarted your computer? Have you turned it back up? Turned it off and back on?
Throbbing Chode said yes. Throbbing Chode said I'm reinstalling my drivers.
Oh no.
Jicho, did you update Windows by accident again? Because that's what happened last time.
I like the idea that Justin is just a text-to-speak the entire time.
For every episode.
And he's just speaking in the third person. That's his
Throbbing
character.
Chode said yes I did.
Oh, you did
Yes, I
update
did,
it.
all caps.
Oh. Okay. Windows just hates audio drivers for some strange.
I had to fix one the other day. It was really annoying.
Oh yeah.
My parents were all over it.
I was actually having an issue with one of my other computers when I was trying to just update to like the new Windows 8 version, and it was my computer just wasn't having it. Like it was just like, no, I don't want to update.
Oh, I thought I was gonna be like, don't you mean 10?
Oh, sorry, yes, I mean 10. Fuck. Exactly. I don't even know anymore, dude.
Oh, I thought you just purposely kept Windows 8 for some reason.
No, sorry. No, I mean, like Windows 10 has like what, the spring update, the summer update, the fall update, stuff like that.
Yeah. Sorry, there was a... Oh god, no. I found someone with Windows 8, and I'm just like, you have just the worst version of everything.
I know, right? Oh my god, I would hate to stay on Windows 8. Have either of you seen Dead by Daylight?
I've played it, yeah. I enjoy it. I've actually played it on the stream setting once. That was very fun.
I played it once with Andrew. It was interesting.
I find it a very interesting game, both in design and in how it's been supported. Because if you look at, let's say June 2017, it was averaging about 10,000 players on Steam, and that's kept growing almost consistently since then. And right now it's sitting around 23,000.
Damn.
Do you
That's
think
and-
it's because of Halloween?
No, it's because of Twitch.
Really?
Yeah, Twitch is making a mainstay. That's crazy.
Remember, that's like a 15-month difference. Just Halloween isn't gonna cut it.
Fair enough.
People get so pumped gradually.
But yeah, when I got it, it was, probably a year and a half ago, probably more than that. And I stopped playing pretty quickly. And then I realized I owned it again when I went to go buy it, because I've been watching a streamer play.
I just love that when you realize you own something.
I think this is the first time it's happened to me. That's how forgettable it was to me the first time I played.
That was me with a bunch of Humble Bundles. I'm like, oh yeah, I own Owlboy. I want to play this.
So, Dom, your thoughts on Dead by Daylight? I remember I had some very conflicting thoughts when the game first came out. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. Like, what's alluring about Dead by Daylight?
If you want to feel like you're in a horror movie, it is perfect for you. I don't think there's any other game I can point to that replicates that experience as completely and in as many different ways as Dead by Daylight does. The only other one that's even close is Friday the 13th. And that has severe, gameplay issues.
There's many issues there.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas Dead by Daylight just kept getting better in the years after its launch.
Did they make improvements to it, or did people just keep around?
Kind of like what we said earlier with games being supported long term. They just keep on doing updates. They have new, murders killers
And survivors.
and survivors. So long term, they have been making updates, and they've been playing around with, I assume, balance as well.
Yes. And then there was also events. Like the Halloween event was a huge benefit to your experience.
What did they do for a Halloween event?
Okay, so you know how it's activating generators to get out of a certain area? And the killer puts you on hooks? Well, there were these bushes that as a survivor you like milked, sort of. You got like sap from flowers or something. And those worked towards an event skin. And then as a killer, you put survivors you downed onto special event hooks that would go toward your progress, toward killer event skins.
That's pretty cool.
It's interesting. It's almost farming for the event items. But it's...
Oh, it totally is.
Yeah.
If you jumped into the game during like the past 3 weeks or so, then often every killer let the survivors win, and every team of survivors let the killer get the max like event hook stack.
Oh, really? It was that pervasive?
Yeah, and actually, I think it dropped some Twitch streamers' numbers because there were so many games. Well, because there were so many games where the other team wasn't playing.
God, I'm trying. I feel like something like that happened earlier.
Weird thing. Multiple games have those kinds of
Moments.
Yeah. I remember in particular the very first time I experienced such a thing was Rumble Fighter. It was a free arena fighting game, and there was like a double money weekend thing where like if you win a match, you would get twice the amount of in-game currency. But there was also a weird kind of it was a weird like glitch, not a glitch, like just a weird technicality where like if no one in the match won or hit anyone, like people would make no hit at all rooms where like if no one touched anyone, everyone would receive the same amount of currency, which was about 75% of the winning currency. So you would get 75% of the winning currency times 2. So people would just jump into these no hit at all rooms. And just
that makes me think of the original state of Battlefront 2, where people did the rubber band trick.
What's that?
Basically, they rubber banded joysticks together and not play the game.
Oh, I heard about that.
Yeah, and then they'll just get XP from that.
Oh man.
Yeah, no, that I was thinking more in terms of old school TF2 rooms are just get the achievements and the skins.
God, that was so bad.
I always just felt so guilty. I'm like, I know this is not how you're supposed to do it, but I really want this item.
As game devs, for you guys in particular, do you think this is good for the community?
Like events?
No, just like this kind of pervasive occurrence in games.
My thoughts are more negative on it.
Go ahead, I'm curious.
Well, I guess it depends. With TF2, I'm more in line to accept it because it's a thing the community makes itself. I kind of think working with the community is one of the beneficial and interesting parts. I don't have the exact one-on-one experience with this, but I find that kind of fighting against the community tends to work against you more than in the times when you don't. So, but then you have moments like you mentioned where nobody plays and it just kind of breaks the design. That's just, I would feel very defeated and like something's wrong. We messed up in some way. Dom, do you have thoughts?
This is talking about what in general?
I guess the moment in which like players aren't playing the game, they're just farming for some kind of item.
Yeah, like when you as a developer try to inject...
Throbbing Chode said, I'm so furious I want to talk about everything.
But yeah,
You should just
when-
call
when-
your phone, and you can put like an earbud mic on his speaker.
Oh my god. I would say that as a developer, if people want to do that, you've won, and if they can do that, you've failed.
What do you mean by want to? You mean?
Oh, I see. The incentives are so high.
Players love your game enough that they are willing to basically game the system and waste time doing that,
Oh,
like
is that
doing some
Justin?
half measure, over playing, like actually playing another game. Then you've made a very good incentivization system.
All right. Okay.
But if those people can actually game your system to the detriment of other players, then you have failed to design your game well enough to where you're enticing that interest, but still maintaining that interest.
Interesting.
Hey,
Okay,
Justin,
okay.
I can hear you, by the way.
Yes,
There
but
you
that's
go,
because
Tom.
I
Hey.
connected. I connected from my phone, and I'm still troubleshooting my
I was
microphone
about to text you
on
that.
my
I was about to
PC.
say like, hey, just jump
That
on your
was-
phone.
That was a fantastic idea, Christian. Thank you. But
Justin,
I'm
welcome
still-
to the GamesCast.
okay, here. There are so many things that I wanted to talk about, like starting from Dom's StarCraft 2, and also about competitive integrity and competitive esports and whatnot. But okay, at the topic at hand, like kind of like how the community exploits certain things and the developers go to patch that. Is that what we're discussing at the moment? Because I can think of a few examples where some developers decided to keep the mechanics slash what the community discovered, and like they played on that, and some developers decided to just completely wipe it out. I think a good example is Gunzi, which is a game that Brian played, but I don't know if you, Christian, or you, Dom, have played it before. But it's basically kind of like a third-person shooter, but it has very-
shooter.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
this. I know
But
this.
it has very melee, Super Smash Bros. Melee-esque mechanics, in the sense that there were a lot of bugs that made movement extremely fluid and intense, but the developers basically kept it, and it defined the game as what it was, and it became a very high APM kind of game because of those bugs. So that's one example where game developers kind of stick to the roots of what the community discovers. Gunzi and Melee, I think those are two very good examples.
Is it called Gunzi the Duel?
Yes.
Yes, Gunzi the Duel. Here,
Sequel called Gunzi too.
I think
Okay.
my friend from high school told me about this, and I never played it.
oh, whoops.
No, but yeah,
That's-
Joe, we were just talking about how, in Dead by Daylight, there was the Halloween update in which players would kind of just stop playing the game for real so they could farm points for the Halloween skins. And I was just asking, for the developers, how do you feel about when communities try to game the system? And
Okay,
Dom brought up
the-
an interesting point that, like,
The thing,
when-
TF2 patched. So we were talking about TF2 and how they're kind of like one of the originators of that, where you would have idling servers and they would have people just sit inside the servers and take damage and then die and then rinse and repeat. You leave that on overnight, and then you get hats and weapons. But TF2 patched that out. But the thing about TF2, I think that's wrong, because TF2, that doesn't affect any other players in TF2. The only person that it does affect is the developer, which is Valve, because they make less money when people don't buy their stuff, because they can just idle to get it, right? So in a sense, it's a legitimate business move, but kind of a dick developer move, because I think players should have the right to do this. But Dead by Daylight, it really does affect the other players in the game, because when you have like a bunch of people idling in the game mode that you're supposed to play, like it defeats the purpose of the game mode that people want to play. People want to play the game for the sake of playing the game, but some people decide that they just want the cosmetics instead of playing the game. Yeah, and TF2 separates that, because they had idle servers. So you go into the idle servers to idle, and then you go into the fun servers to have fun.
I think this
But
goes back
Dead by
to what
Daylight-
Dom said. Sorry to interrupt, Justin. how
Yeah.
like some streamers that do Dead by Daylight are losing viewership. Like this is one person going in to play the game, but they can't play because everybody else is just trying to get resources for the event.
And it's just detrimental to the community and to the livelihoods of these streamers.
But of course, that's not something developers can or arguably should take into account when making the game.
Yeah.
I find that usually happens in the middle of development when players have played the game / experienced the game enough to know that there's something that can be exploited. So like you can't really initially plan for this kind of stuff because it gradually evolves over time. Like Melee didn't start as a game where you could wave dash and waveland because people didn't know that these things existed until they played like a shit ton of it. So like the developers didn't initially think that wave dashing was going to be such a big phenomenon in Melee. They knew it existed, they knew it was an interesting looking bug, but they didn't know it would become pivotal to Melee gameplay. So like developers can't plan it in advance for like everything, you know? And it's up to them whether or not they want to fix it. Like there are so many examples where some developers fix it and fix certain issues and some developers don't. I'm trying to think of one where they fixed it and it ended up being like detrimental. Okay, in TF2, Team Fortress 2, there would be these really wacky places where you could put your engineer buildings on top of like certain roofs and secluded corners. Basically, if you could like use your dispenser to jump onto certain small platforms that are normally unreachable for most classes, and if you have enough space to build on it, then you can build on it. And what the developers basically did is that in a later patch, they made you could still climb onto those ledges and like rocket jump onto those ledges, but they just made it so that engineers couldn't build their buildings on it. So like I thought that was very disappointing because there were a lot of creative routes that engineers had for putting their buildings in very secluded corners that other newbie engineers wouldn't know about, but very good engineers did, and they basically took those out. I think that kind of took away from some of the skill that engineer had when playing engineer. So I think those development patches are like bad. If it takes away from the skill of a game, which is usually the case, I think, for some of these things that developers seem to patch out, then I think that's detrimental. I'm trying to think of another one. Okay. There's another one in League of Legends. It is like highly controversial. They were talking about implementing timers for certain objectives, like when the dragon spawns, when certain buffs spawn. Back in the day, like way back before most of the developers made a lot of quality of life changes, you had to physically time your buffs and type it into the chat. Whenever you killed dragon, you would have to like type like 6 minutes from your current time. Let's say dragon is killed at 12 minutes, you would have to type in 1800 dragon. So in order to prepare for it. And so what Riot decided to do is that they would implement timers for every single objective in League of Legends. Whenever Baron spawns, whenever Dragon spawns, whenever the buffs spawn and despawn. And so you wouldn't actually have to time it yourself anymore. But then a lot of players argued that it kind of dumbed down the game because you wouldn't have to track it individually yourself. But the counter argument from Riot was that League of Legends isn't a timer simulator. You're not supposed to play League of Legends for the sake of timing your buffs. You're playing League of Legends for other purposes, like your macro and micro of your champions and etc. So that's another example that I thought of. Am I talking to myself?
No.
Okay.
Totally.
I was gonna say,
I wouldn't be surprised. It's happened so many times. They're just,
yeah.
I'd be in another Discord and I'd be like, no, rent, and then they wouldn't respond, or they'd be in their own conversation. And I'm like, and then I realized that I'm muted, and I unmute myself, and I'm just like, I'm talking to myself. I'm glad you guys agree with me so wholeheartedly.